Welcome to the Lead Change podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Mary Mulcahy. I'm an orthopedic sports medicine surgeon with a huge interest in contributing to the growth and development of other leaders. On this podcast, we will share stories from many leaders in all medical specialties to understand the skills necessary to be an effective leader. We'll celebrate their success and hear about strategies to overcome hurdles. We will also highlight some of the unique challenges faced by women in medicine who are interested in pursuing leadership positions and the importance of mentorship, sponsorship, and allyship in achieving and being successful in those roles. Let's work together, build on shared experiences, learn from those before us, and use these lessons to propel us forward in our career. Let's lead change. Welcome, everyone, to the Lead Change podcast. We're coming to you live from the 22nd European Society of Sports Traumatology, Knee Surgery, and Arthroscopy, that is ESSKA, Congress in Prague. I'm very excited to have Dr. Jacques Menetrey here on the podcast today. Dr. Menetrey is professor of orthopedic surgery at the University Hospital of Geneva and acted as the head of the orthopedic sports medicine unit from 2003 to 2016. He is currently the medical director of the Swiss Olympic Medical Center at Hersland Clinique, La Colline in Geneva, Switzerland, since 2016. Dr. Menetrey was also president of ESSKA from 2020 to 2022. Dr. Menetrey studied medicine at the University of Lausanne. He completed his orthopedic training at the University Hospital of Geneva and achieved a sports medicine fellowship and research fellowship at the University of Pittsburgh Medical Center. He wrote his medical thesis about musculoskeletal injuries in professional dancing and his private docent thesis about how to improve muscle healing, which were both successfully presented at the University of Geneva, Switzerland. His main area of clinical activity is orthopedic sports medicine, focusing on knee and muscle surgery, as well as primary knee replacement surgery. He is also the medical director of the professional ice hockey team, GSHC, and has been the medical director of the alpine skiing at the Youth Olympic Games Lausanne in 2020, doctor for the Swiss alpine ski team, former medical director of the Cycling World Pro Team, IAM Cycling, the Béjart Ballet, and Geneva Ballet. Dr. Menetrey has also been the head of the Geneva Basic and Advanced Knee. So I initially met Jacques at the ESSKA Congress in Paris in 2022, which was the culmination of the 3.5-week tour throughout Europe that I did as part of the AOSSM to ESSKA Traveling Fellowship. Jacques was completing his 2-year term as president of ESSKA at that Congress. He was very welcoming to our whole group, and I could tell immediately that Jacques was very well liked and respected by his colleagues. He has a very strong and effective leader, but also as someone who doesn't take himself too seriously and likes to have a lot of fun, and that all came across very clearly. It has been great to get to know Jacques better over the past 4 years through many interactions within the global sports medicine community. I'm excited to have him discuss his extensive involvement in ESSKA and some of the most impactful lessons he has learned throughout his leadership journey. Jacques, welcome to the podcast.
Hey.
Very excited to have you here. I really appreciate you taking the time at this very busy Congress. So before we discuss some of your leadership roles, and especially within ESSKA, of course, I was hoping you could share a little bit more with us about your clinical practice and your specific areas of expertise and interest.
Well, I've been for years now a knee surgeon, and if I looked at my research field, I made a lot of studies and work in muscle healing as well. So I'm also working on the clinical side on all muscle injuries and muscle repair. And I'm sort of operating all the patients from Western Switzerland that has, let's say, complicated muscle injury, going from recurrent exertional compartment syndrome to painful proximal hamstring avulsion or extensive tear.
Wow, yes, I did not know that. And those injuries are really complicated, and I'm sure there are not many people taking care of them. And so you said you have a very large referral area. I can imagine that.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Transitioning a little bit to ESSKA, I'm curious, how and when did you first get involved in ESSKA?
Oh, well, that was at the Congress in Budapest in 1996. And I was presenting a paper about a new injury in professional ballet dancer, which were the subluxation of the talar and subtalar joint. And I remember always my mentor at the time, Professor Daniel Fricci, who has been also a former ESSKA president, told me, be very precise in your conclusion, because in the audience, you will have Professor Nick Van Dyke, who is very much involved in foot and ankle surgery and is taking care also of ballet. So I gave my lecture, and at the end of my lecture, I turned to the audience, and the first one I saw behind the microphone was Professor Nick Van Dyke, and he has been extremely gracious and polite with me, asked me a very nice question. So there's been a very, I would say, vivid memory I had from my first appearance to ESSKA.
Yes, very impactful. I know those situations where you say, oh no, this is the real expert in the field, and what difficult question is going to come here. Were you a student at the time? Were you a resident? Where were you in your training?
I was a second year resident, so I was very young. And that was what I had already had some presentation at the national level or at the local level, but that was my first international, I would say, presentation. So it was already quite impressive. But once again, I think it gave me a lot of confidence. And, in the back of my mind, I said, in ESSKA, there is nice people, because I was obviously expecting, a very difficult time. But once again, Nick has been so gracious and I would say supportive in his remarks. That was really nice.
Yeah, that's wonderful. No, that's certainly the experience that I have had, even in just these 4 years, of how welcoming and supportive everyone is. So what were some of the committees, though, that you were on, and sort of specific roles and positions that you held within ESSKA as you ultimately moved towards the presidential line?
Well, I've been very early on, I would say, involved in ESSKA activities, because once again, my boss at the time was in the presidential line. Professor Fritschi became ESSKA president. Obviously, we couldn't have two Swiss guys in the ESSKA board. So I've been involved in the U45 committee that has been funded when I chaired it. I've been involved in the basic science committee as well. I work in a special work group about allograft and implementation of allograft in Europe, allograft tissue. Then I've been involved also on the educational side before joining in Geneva, at the Geneva's meeting, the board of ESSKA as a general secretary, obviously to the presidential line. And now I'm a PPPP.
That's the best role, right?
Yeah.
But so you had quite a varied experience and involvement in several committees. And what were just some of the lessons you took away from that committee involvement, that work, as you sort of moved onto the board? Like, how did that help prepare you?
Well, I think first of everything, I got a good knowledge of the society's organization and way of working in depth, because from the beginning, when you are chairing a committee, you are involved in, I would say, all the board meeting, not the full board meeting, of course, but you participate to part of the board meeting. You see a little bit how people interact. You can see how the leader and the leadership are behaving, how they are tackling situations, sorting it out. So that's been, I would say, a great education to touch that from these type of committees. And obviously, I was sharing the days with Professor Fritschi, who was the president. So he was a bit this confident. So I was aware of all the story, good, maybe less easy to sort out, that were getting into the society. Therefore, I had already a good, I would say, a really good knowledge of the way the society was working before, I would say, getting in the core of it.
The important perspective as you've had exposure and involvement with different committees. And like you said, you learned a lot about how the society works as a whole, different people, like how people also work together. And then you had sort of this also added experience of working alongside in your clinical practice with the current president. And so getting that sort of insight as well. So I'm sure that helped really prepare you to get onto the board. And because it's a whole different level of experience once you're on that board, how you learn about kind of the inner workings.
Absolutely. And during your medical study, as well as during your training as a resident or as a fellow, you never got that type of education. I mean, there is no course to be a leader in any field. We don't have, at least in our medical school, we don't have management courses. We don't have any workshop that are related to these type of activities. So you really have, as a doctor, You really have to educate yourself, I would say, by doing it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And honestly, that is a big part of my motivation to be hosting this podcast and to have incredible leaders like you sharing lessons that you've learned so that hopefully everyone can sort of start to learn these things, think about it, think about these valuable lessons, and hopefully be a little bit more prepared as they enter whatever leadership role that is. Whether it's a titled role or just being a physician and being a surgeon, but having those leadership skills is critical. And we are not, even in the United States, it's not part of our regular medical school curriculum. So very, very important. And as you were on the board and really transitioning to the presidential line for ESSKA, what were some of your main goals? What were some of the things you were hoping to accomplish in that main period of the presidential line?
Obviously, I reached once again, the core of the society where we were in the process of the professionalization. And I remember when I started, actually, I was the general secretary and I had one woman, but what a woman, which was Jana Kowalczuk. At the time, she was almost alone. We had one secretary left from the previous office staff that was still there, but Jana had really to start from the scratch. And I was involved, obviously, as general secretary. And our goal was really to get to this professionalization. And therefore, we hired very specific people. And those people are still there about 14 years later. So this is probably one of the, I would say, best reward you can get when you have hired the good people. You make them loyal to the organization and they are still there after so many years. I think this has been a very important thing. Second point was also obviously to increase the scientific level of the society, the educational level of the society, to get through this continuum from the core curriculum towards the certification program that now we have very well set it up. And those, I would say, major points were really, how can I say that, my major motivation all the way through the presidential line.
Yeah, that's incredible to hear that story and that sort of timeline, and that when you first started in the presidential line, the focus was really largely on the kind of operations side, where getting the staff and the infrastructure and the foundation was critical. And now amazing to hear that many of these people are still here 14 years later and are an integral part of ESSKA and all the functionings, and then really building on these other initiatives that we've heard a lot about even at this Congress too, and the huge success of these things, the professionalism, the certification program, all these things that are well sort of implemented and integrated. But it was a ton of work that started years ago.
It took us 20 years. And this is, I would say, the peculiar thing of Europe. You must imagine that you have to get people involved from north of Norway to south of Greece, going through Turkey to all the way to Portugal, with so many different mentality, culture, languages, etc. And to, I would say, get everybody together and get a good consensus. This was a long journey.
Yeah, it is incredible and very, a unique challenge. But we don't face the same challenge in the United States, for example. Although the United States itself obviously is big, but we all speak English. We all share similar, culture. There's slightly different accents. That's about the extent of it, but not nearly the level of challenge that you have with coordinating and making sure everybody's opinion from Norway to all the way down are included, or that you take into account everybody's opinion and that the cultural differences are really important. So I think that's great to emphasize that, and that is actually one of the sort of really unique aspects of ESSKA. And you see the success here at a Congress like this, the success of all of the efforts that the whole team has put in over these years. It's amazing. So at the Congress here in Prague, you are being awarded lifetime honorary membership, which is ESSKA's highest career honor. Huge, huge congratulations. That is incredibly well-deserved. Listening, who might not be aware, lifetime honorary membership in ESSKA is an award that is bestowed directly by the Society's leadership based on a distinguished global reputation and decades of service to the discipline of orthopedic sports medicine. So Jacques, can you share with us what it means to you to receive this recognition?
I may have to say it means a lot, because ESSKA means a lot. Once again, I would say in the art as well as in science, when you receive a prize that is given by your peers, I think it really represent a lot of things because it means that you have worked well, that you have been respected, that your value has been shared by many people. So I'm really, really touched by this award and reward, and I really would like to deeply thank the ESSKA board and all the people involved in the selection. I have also to thank all the people I have worked with, because getting to this point is never, I would say, a journey that you go through individually. This is really a teamwork, and this is something that involves all the people that has been into the society from the office, that plays a very important role in the success of the society. Once again, under the leadership of Jana Kowalczuk, with all my colleagues. Because I may have to say, sitting in the ESSKA board is a unique privilege. And for me, I have learned so much during these years in the board. Excellence first, once again, to be able to federate all the energy towards one goal, for example. But the most important privilege is to sit with very smart people. And I would say nowadays, in our fake world, this is a unique privilege. And this is one thing that we can do when you are in ESSKA.
Yeah, and that's incredible. And congratulations again. Honestly, it's tremendous to be here, to have this conversation with you, and to be able to hear from you, your perspective on being granted this award. It's really tremendous, and crediting all those people that have also contributed to all that's happened over these past several years. But just congratulations. It really is very, very well deserved. And this is switching gears a little bit, but I'm always curious to ask, what would you define, Jacques, as your superpower? And by this, I mean, really, what would you say are your biggest strengths that contributes to your success and really helps set you apart from other people?
Well, I'm really coming from the sports world since I was an athlete, and I learned to be focused and objective. I learned to prioritize. I learned to save my energy. And I think thanks to my parents and my education, I receive a smile. And I think probably this is one of my strengths. I think it's important to smile in the world we are to, even in surgery. The sense of humor is also very important. And being at the center of Europe, I receive the influence of all the different cultures. I received the influence of the Mediterranean culture, but also I received the influence from the German side, even from the North sides, where this is, I would say, always, how can I say that, more precise, not more rigid. I don't like the term rigid, but a little bit more solid. So probably my superpower is the possibility to have the Mediterranean creativity with, I would say, the more German or North-oriented, I would say, framed mind. I don't know if I can say that this way. Let's say organized or peculiar on details, and making that two influences fit.
Yeah, I think that is fantastic and absolutely a huge strength and a superpower. And even in just 4 years of knowing you, I have seen that very clearly. So that is fantastic that you really just incorporate all those cultures and the strengths around you. So as leaders too, we all face challenges. That really is inevitable. And I think by many, it can be seen as an opportunity for growth. So what are some of the lessons that you've learned from challenges that you've faced, even in just the major leadership roles that you've held within ESSKA?
Well, I think the very first thing is humility. You must be humble, and you must be simple. There is no, I would say, situation that can be improved by increasing the complexity or pretending that it's too sophisticated. I think you really have to take the situation, the issue, analyze it, and try to find, I would say, a simple solution, and a solution that you can sell to your people. We used to say that when people are involved in society, they either serve the society or they serve themselves. And luckily enough, in ESSKA, we are there to serve the society. And once again, I think it finds some echo to the point that when I was saying that you sitting and exchanging with smart people, This is really the case. And as a leader, once again, the point is not to promote yourself. I mean, this is bad manager who does that. A leader should promote the others and make the others better, you know? And for me, the best coach in sports are the ones that are capable of making thy players or thy athletes the best they can and the best they are. And this is what has been, I would say, my lesson through all these education and training of leadership.
I think that that's fantastic. And you touched on really two main areas. But first, going back to the challenges, I love that advice that you gave. Say, make it simple and just focus on that one issue and try to, certainly don't add complexity to a challenge, right? Just make it simple and be direct and try to address it. So I think that that's fantastic advice. And then you went in a little bit. My next question for you actually was going to be related to, what advice do you have for other sports medicine surgeons who may be interested in pursuing leadership roles within ESSKA or other sports medicine societies? And you touched on that a little bit, but I wonder if there's anything else that you would add to that.
Obviously, you need to be trained. And at the time with David Dejoux, we had a lot of discussion about it. And once again, we were enthusiasts, but we didn't have specific training. So we have been in touch with IMD in Lausanne, which is a school that is specialized in leadership and in training. And we therefore asked them for workshops. And we have been also trained. Point obvious, you need to read. This is like in science. If you want to master science, you need to know science. And therefore, you need to read, you need to educate yourself, you need to obviously make these principles and all the knowledge you have read in the practical field, which is not always easy, but obviously you need to do your own education by reading or listening to podcasts nowadays.
Exactly. But no, I love that. I mean, I think it's a key point too, that obviously being a surgeon is the first priority, being an excellent surgeon and making sure to master those skills. And through, for example, the certification programs in ESSKA or other courses, depending on where you are in the world. But that obviously is a top priority. And then taking advantage of opportunities to hone and learn and grow your leadership skills through a lot of different means. So I love that. Thanks for sharing that advice. And I wanted to close our discussion with 3 questions for you that I like to ask all guests on my podcast. So first is, this podcast is lead change. And so I wonder, Jacques, what does lead change mean to you?
Well, I think this is a difficult question because this is, I would say, the current lifespan. And you have to accept the new roles and the new things you have in front. So I'm never looking back, except when I can pull experience from let's say, the experience I had. For the rest, I'm always looking forward. And this is still true today. So always try to improve, always try to get better, be better trained, to listen to others. And I'm perfectly aware of the fact, like we do it in consensus, that when we have general judgments about things, it's much better than individual judgment about one thing.
Yeah, no, I mean, I agree completely. And I think that it's an advantage that we have, is to work together. To building a consensus is a good example, but working together to use everybody's strengths to move things forward in whatever capacity that is. And absolutely, leveraging each other's strengths just makes the whole organization, the whole group, that much stronger. So I really love that point. And then I wonder too, have you read any leadership books that you have found to be particularly impactful? Are there just any types of resources or opportunities with regards to developing leadership skills that you would recommend?
I would say I read a book that was very important, which is From Good to Best by Johnson. And I think that was a very, very important book in my education. Then I may have to say I'm not particularly in football, but I love the idea of Alex Ferguson's book called Leadership, that is bringing the activity of a coach, a football coach or football manager, if they call it in England, to the global, I would say, education of leadership. And those 2 books were, I would say, very important for my education.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And I think also raising the point of, I think coaches in general are, some coaches I've interacted with are really some of the best leaders that I've ever met. And I think it's so much of what they have to do and working with the team and different types of players. And so I love bringing in that book from kind of this sporting world and all that you can learn from the leadership perspective from a book like that. And then the last question I'd like to ask you is, do you have any favorite quote?
This is one from Aristotle, that excellence is not a talent. Excellence is something you exercise every day.
Yeah, so true. Thank you very much. I have not heard that quote in quite a while. That's fantastic. So, Jacques, thank you so much for being on the podcast. I have really, really enjoyed our discussion. And thank you for sharing some of the many lessons that you've learned in your various leadership roles and providing some great advice to everyone listening about how to be an impactful and effective leader. Congratulations again on being awarded lifetime honorary membership in ESSKA. Thank you for all that you've done and continue to do to support the growth and development of orthopedic sports medicine. And I feel very fortunate to have met you at the ESSKA Congress 4 years ago. And I look forward to many, many more opportunities to work together. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Mary.